Hey there, guys. So today we have another basic beers, and we're covering British beer. Working retail, I find that a lot of people get attracted to, for import-wise, Belgian style and German style. But British style is definitely rich with deep amounts of history. And we're covering a beer called Old Crafty Hen from Morland. You might be familiar with Old Speckled Hen, and that is that beer blended with a beer called Old 5X, and that is a big 12% beer that they end up aging for a couple of years in, or a few years in big oak foeders. And so that's going to be familiar to the Old Ale. So the Old Ale is a beer with a lot of rich history. Basically, back in the day, they would brew a beer and then leave it in barrels for an extended amount of time. And we're talking about 19th century, before the understanding of yeast. So you would have this kind of like porous barrel. You would have souring. You would have Brett Funk. You would have vinous qualities from the barrel. You would have all the barrel character in there. You would have a big rich malty beer. You would have oxidation. You'd have warmer temperatures. So you'd have all this stuff, getting into this beer. And so it's a very much a history of beer that is something that we don't understand, something that we definitely don't taste, because you're talking about really like funky, tart, highly carbonated, malty beer with a good amount of hopping. So they'd end up, aging that beer, making that beer, and then they would blend it with mild ale, which was a fresh beer, so something a little bit more soft, something a little bit more fruity, and so you'd have a combination of something with big amounts of interesting flavor with something a little bit more mild. And so they're sort of recreating that in this, but again, any kind of like vinous or funky kind of Brett notes or barrel character we get in this one will probably be not as crazy as it was back then, but really curious. Have actually never had this beer, so first time having it. We're doing old, basic beers, and I'm learning with you guys. So beer looks pretty nice. Beer comes in a deep amber color. Yeah, deep amber color, medium to deep amber color. Nice off-white kind of head on that, but yeah, really nice looking beer. Gorgeous stuff. Let's give you a rum on this. 6.5% ABV, by the way. Very nice. Yeah, you certainly get that kind of rich kind of malt quality from British beers. It really has a nice kind of toasty quality, rich amounts of bread crust, just beautiful stuff. A little bit of nuttiness. I'm also smelling maybe a touch of diacetyl. There's supposed to be a little bit of like this beer might have a touch of like buttery kind of diacetyl kind of thing. But wonderful toastiness. You're also getting English ale yeast, so maybe you're getting some fruity esters, and maybe getting, again, I always call it apples, but it actually has this kind of apple banana kind of thing. It's pretty interesting. Yeah. Behind it, but yeah, there's also a nice depth of caramel, maybe a little touch of like woodiness in there. It smells really interesting, just like the wonderful amounts of depth, malt complexity. A little bit of sweetness, a little bit of fruity, a little bit of like hints of like sharp character as well. Cheers. By the way, I have this like really nice and warmed up. This is probably 55 to 60 degrees. Yeah, it's like British ale temperature. Quite nice. Wow, really nice. So yeah, drinks really nicely. So in general, you get a nice kind of chewy breadiness. You're leaning towards a little bit of like crusty kind of quality in there. A little bit of leaning towards a little bit of like melanoidins. A little bit of that kind of Maillard reaction. But yeah, really nice kind of like sweetness. Again, from what I understand, there should be a little bit of diacetyl in here, so it offers this little bit of like buttery thing. So you get a little bit of like rich buttery toast. It actually works with the beer quite nicely. But then after that initial attack of malty sweetness, it really covers up with hops. You get traditional kind of earthy and like woody kind of British hops to cover up the palate. It just like sort of takes over the palate. It doesn't take over the palate, but really complements the buttery quality in the malts in this beer. Carbonation is relatively soft, medium minus carbonation. And it drinks pretty nicely, 6.5%. As you wait on the back end, you really get this kind of caramel intensity of flavor without the sweetness. So it really is balanced out by the hops, but there's really this rich kind of like butterscotch kind of flavor. Really nice kind of butterscotch caramel in the finish. Again, you get a really rich kind of depth and complexity compared to Old Speckled Hen. It has this really big beer in there. You get a little, maybe not really too much barrel character. As I wait more on the back end, there could be a little bit of tannins and that bitterness from the woody hops, which complement each other. But I really like the diacetyl character in here. There's really a nice kind of like buttery kind of quality. It really tastes like butterscotch caramel beer on bread. And as I wait, there's a little bit of those fruity esters from the British ale yeast coming through. Really nice stuff. Interesting stuff, yeah. And despite that diacetyl, the bitterness of the hops really helps balance it out. It's a really fun beer. So there you guys go. This is Old Crafty Hen. What a fun beer. Until next time, guys, cheers. Let me know if you have any more suggestions for some basic beers. Let me know if you enjoy your good old ales. Until next time, guys, cheers.